We are here to read The Girl in the Centerfold. We're on chapter 13, so we only have 2 chapters left, and I'm sad because this has been so interesting and such a cool journey with you guys. Like when I post, and then to see you comment, oh, like 10 minutes later, like, oh, been looking forward to this and stuff. Like, that's just been really nice. So I'll miss that, doing that with you guys. But this is really interesting, so I feel like we can definitely finish it off tonight. I just posted chapter 12 and all the other chapters are in the playlist. So if you guys want to join and read The Girl in the Centerfold, which is the story of and by Surrey Marshe, she is Playboy's Playmate of the Month, 1967 for January. And I gotta crack my neck. And she wrote this book in 1969. So she was only in her 20s when she wrote this, and it's just a super interesting document of her experience with the early days of Playboy with Hugh Hefner, back with the Chicago mansion before they even had the LA mansion, which a lot of the LA mansion stuff is based off of the Chicago mansion. So it's super, super interesting, and I recommend joining in with chapter 1 and going all the way through because each one is super interesting stuff about Hugh Hefner, about life as a bunny and philosophy of bunnies and what they are, the mansion, her trip, shooting as a playmate and what that means. Just so many different individual sections that are all so interesting and worth listening to. So, yeah, you probably haven't made it this far without listening to those chapters, but if you have, I recommend that you go and listen to them. So, we're going to go on with chapter 13, Canned, and thank you guys all for being here. In late summer, Louis went away on a business trip and never came back. A friend told me what had happened. I felt sorry for Louis. I didn't know what prison he was in, but wherever it was, he would hate it. I tried to imagine him in a striped uniform or whatever convicts wear in American prisons, but I couldn't. I preferred to think of him running through the surf or laughing his full head off at the craps table. Feeling sorry for Louis doesn't mean I felt sorry for myself. I hadn't loved Louis. I always knew the thing between us wouldn't last. He was just a friend, a teacher. But I'd like to say something about Louis. It might be called a character reference. I often ask myself what Louis saw in me. What was I to him? Until he went to prison, I didn't know. For a time, I thought I was sex to him, until I found out I wasn't. I meant fun to him, but he could have found that with almost anyone. And I was never an ornament to him, a pretty decoration on his arm. Louis never needed that. The bunny playmate thing never meant a thing to him. We never talked about it directly, but I always sensed that Louis didn't approve of my past very much. I know now that I was Louis's Sunday. I don't mean Sunday as a day of rest, but Sunday as the day one never does evil on. This Sunday can come any day or part thereof. This Sunday can only last a minute. Perhaps I'm naive, but I believe that every evil man, and Louis obviously was evil, has some kindness, generosity, goodness in him which he holds on to keep his self-respect. Louis didn't love me, but he was kind to me. Most of the time he was selling dope, an evil, evil thing to do. In the middle of it, he tried to help me, and he did help me. He was not all bad. He had a Sunday. After Louis, I severed my relations with Playboy. I should say I finished severing them, for I left the citadel of skin in 2 stages, one of which had already occurred. It was hard to break off with Playboy. I had a deep involvement. I was a bunny. I had been a playmate. I was doing promotions. I didn't know anything else. In one form or another, Playboy paid me close to $10,000 a year. Where else was I going to earn that? The promotions made it possible to leave. Several propositions had been made to me at the club about being a model. These were in the category of, say, Surrey, you ought to be a model. At first, I dismissed them as come-ons, but gradually, particularly when girls said it, I began to listen. Apparently, I was photogenic enough for Playboy to go through all that rigmarole. Apparently, too, it wasn't too difficult to be a model. You just had some pictures taken and made the rounds of agencies seeking work. As it was explained to me by various models, you started slowly. But as you made the rounds and found work, you became known, and the pace improved. As I did the promotions, I realized I could handle myself in various public situations. More, the Playboy promotions were already one source of employment. Thus, in June 1967, I took the big step, left the Playboy Club, and became a professional model. Without the crutch of the promotions, I don't think I had. Without the crutch of the promotions, I don't think I'd have. I don't think I've had the guts to do it. Whatever. The second step in severing my relations with Playboy was to stop doing the promotions. Playboy did this for me, or more correctly, Renee Rossini did. Near the end of July, Renee called from Chicago, saying she had a promotion for me in September. I said, fine. She wanted me to reserve the date. I said, fine. It was to be in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I said, fine. She said fine and promised to write me the details and send me train tickets. I said fine. All this was par for the course. Such procedures had occurred several times. I did other promotions during August. On the 23rd and 24th, I went to Johnstown and Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. On September 1st, I went to Endicott, New York. As the date approached for me to go to Bridgeport, something happened. Rather, nothing happened. No letter, no instructions, no tickets. I waited around Saturday. No last-minute phone call, zero. I assumed the promotion had been canceled. Monday morning, I called Renee in Chicago. What happened to the Bridgeport promotion? Was it canceled? Renee reacted as though a minor catastrophe had occurred, something on the order of an H-bomb exploding in her office. What? She shrieked. You didn't do it? God, I better check right away. Call me in 15 minutes. I called in 15 minutes. This gives me anxiety. This is stressful. I called in 15 minutes. Renee was even more upset. They were too upset to talk to me, so I'm too upset to talk to you. I wasn't too happy either. But Renee, it's not my fault. You never sent me any instructions. What do you mean? Are you trying to say you never got my letter? That's right, I never got a letter. You're lying, Surrey. I know you are. I can prove it. I have a copy of the letter I sent you on my desk right now. I tried to protest. She hung up. 2 days later, Renee called again. Her voice was cold, bitter, and so distant she must have been calling from the Gobi Club. Well, you did it, Surrey. You sure did. The store in Bridgeport is suing Playboy for $10,000, and it's all your fault. I don't recall the rest of her words exactly, but the gist was that Playboy had no truck with girls like me, and neither did she. I had done my last Playboy promotions. I had done my last Playboy promotions. Turn in my cheerleader's costume. I was canned. I was surprised, angry, and hurt. Not at being fired, but for being blamed for something that wasn't my fault. I simply had never received a letter from Renee Rossini. If I had written it as she claimed, then the post office had lost it. If she had written it as she claimed, then the post office had lost it. I didn't like being the goat. On impulse, I called the store in Bridgeport and talked to the manager, apologizing for not showing up and explaining why. We don't blame you, Miss Marsh. We know it's not your fault. A nice man. In the next few days, a great deal of activity took place. Perhaps a bomb had gone off in Chicago, for clearly I was embroiled in some kind of crisis. First, an investigator representing the store called from Bridgeport. He wanted to come to New York to obtain a statement from me. I said okay, then thought better of it, calling the New York club to see what I should do. This resulted in a telephone conversation with a Chicago lawyer representing Playboy. He insisted I not talk to the Bridgeport investigator. I didn't. Then I was contacted by a New York lawyer representing Playboy. He showed me the copy of the letter Renee had supposedly written to me. It was a very sweet, tender, affectionate epistle. As I recall, it began, Dearest Surrey, and ended, Love. Along with the instructions about the promotion, she inquired about my well-being and expressed the opinion and hope that I'd have a good time in Bridgeport. I told the lawyer that this was a strange letter, quite unlike any other she had ever written to me. Usually, usually she was perfunctory, beginning "Hi Surrey," stating her instructions briefly and scrawling her name. I simply never knew she loved me. In any event, I said, I never got this particular letter. I think the lawyer believed me. He said I shouldn't worry, everything would work out okay. A couple of days later, the phone rang. I picked it up. I said, hello. Surrey, dear, how are you? It's so good to hear your voice. I was surprised, to say the least. Renee Rossini. After various effusive inquiries as to my health, happiness, and general welfare, she made this announcement. Oh, Surrey, I've got so many promotions lined up for you. You're going to be so busy. This had to be the strangest phone call of my life. Renee Rossini, who only a few days previously had scolded me and fired me, was now obviously unfiring me and, in the process, making no reference at all to the recent unpleasantness. I had the feeling that if I'd asked about the store in Bridgeport, she'd have asked, what store was that, Surrey dear? But I didn't ask about the store. In fact, I didn't say very much of anything except, Renee, I don't want to do any more promotions. I meant it, and I didn't. I'd had Playboy. I was done with Playboy. But not quite. There was one more incident that sort of put the cap on my entire Playboy adventure. In April 1968, I was employed by MGM Records to work their booth at a convention in the New York Coliseum. It wasn't much of a job. It was just to be there to help attract people to their booth, but I needed the money. The MGM executives knew I'd been a Playmate. I suppose that is why they hired me. In any event, they wanted a centerfold picture of me and called Playboy to obtain one. About 2 hours later, one of the record men came up to me. Say, what's the matter with you at Playboy? Why? They don't seem to like you very much. When I called to get the picture of you, this guy said, are you using Surrey Marshe? I said we were. He said, didn't you know she has a very bad reputation here at Playboy? What's that all about? I told him that there had been some sort of mix-up on a promotion about 6 months back, but I thought it had been all straightened out. I didn't know what I'd done to give me a very bad reputation. I was hurt and enraged. I had done everything Playboy had asked of me. I'd posed nude. I'd done the damn promotions, 14 of them, and been one of their best girls at it. I'd been blamed for something that wasn't my fault and fired, and then unblamed and unfired. If Playboy didn't like me and didn't want to hire me, that was fine with me. But they had no right to tell other people for whom I was working that I had a very bad reputation. Was I being blacklisted? In my rage, I wrote 2 letters. One was to Hugh Hefner, telling him all that had happened and asking him if he thought it was fair to try to hurt me in this way. What right did he have to tell others I had a bad reputation? And what did he base it on anyway? I didn't deserve such treatment, etc., etc., etc. But I didn't send the letter directly to Hefner. I enclosed it in a letter to Vince Tajiri, leaving it up to him to decide whether it would do any good to Hefner to know what was going on in his organization. Vince wrote a note saying he had passed my letter along to HMH, but I never got a reply from Hefner. Thus, my Playboy experience ended, leaving me with a bad taste. I guess it might be described as the taste of warm, flat Pepsi in which somebody had knocked the ashes from a pipe during the course of a Gatsby-esque wee-for-all a week ago. Dang, she's calling out his Pepsi habit back in 1969. And he still had his Pepsi habit all the way in the 2000s. Alright, guys, there's only this much left. So I'm going to stop this and then restart a live to continue Actually, yeah, no, I'll just restart another one so that way it can still go chapter by chapter and no one gets lost and confused as to where chapter 14 is. So thank you so much for listening, and I'm excited for the last chapter.